And if we go dark, I'll put all those things out there.
Yeah.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still have the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is. Yeah. And you're trying to tell me that they're going to concerts and kibbutzes and schools and by reports, 6 hours. Let's say it's 3 hours.
That's suspect.
I'm going to continue to ask the question. A 20-hour response in a country the size of New Jersey. That begs a big explanation.
What he's saying is a 20-hour response time on October 7th. That's what he's talking about. That implicates Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government being in on what we all said. They funded Hamas. They gave a stand-down order. They knew this attack was coming for over a year. As the New York Times revealed, they had the plans. So what they did was they kind of staged this so they could use this as almost like a false flag so they could then go wipe out Gaza and take over Gaza and the West Bank. What he's saying is it took them 20 hours to respond, which means they were in on this. But this was a plan. This wasn't an accident that they didn't know Hamas was going to attack them. They knew it. They funded it. They gave a stand-down order and didn't respond for 20 hours.
And more importantly, America is significantly underwriting the Israeli government $4 billion a year. We as American taxpayers deserve answers to this. We deserve answers. Also, if we're going to get into a regional or world war based on an intel failure, we pay for this. What are we buying, right? I got smeared as a Jew hater, an anti-Semite, and conspiracy theorist because I said exactly what I just said. And I refuse to back down despite all the smears thrown at me. Because I learned during COVID. I learned when they told us that it came from a bat in the Himalayas. I learned when they told us the vaccine was safe and effective. I learned when they told us that ivermectin was horse paste, that you better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us free. Thank you so much.
You better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us free. And if you talk to Mikey McCoy's pastor father, he'll tell you to shut up. Stop asking questions. What are you doing asking questions? Just accept what Kash Patel tells you. Just accept what the government says. What's wrong with you? You're a bad person.
They're going to try... I gotta be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. This idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty, that's morally after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets.
I think at this point we're all on the same page about 9/11, everyone that follows me on Instagram. But now I'm wondering, did Israel also do 9/10?
Planning to do? And Jewish donors, They have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges. It's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. It's like time for you guys to wake up and say no more. Draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me.
Was Charlie noticing too much? Is that what happened? I'm not saying Israel did Charlie Kirk, but you can, if you want, in the comments section. Let me know what you think.
But it goes to the point where, if, for example, if I have less ability sometimes online to criticize the Israeli government without backlash than actual Israelis do. It's
been so unfair. They were coming after you after a turning point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Like, I host a person that I moderate the debate of, mind you, right? And I give equal time to Josh Hammer, equal time to a pro-Israel advocate, and my moral character is being put into question. And so I think it's a hyper paranoid, like, we're just going to try to, we're going to just stamp out everything type of practice.
It's there's some rule you can't go there when it comes to Israel.
Well, you and I believe that we're Americans and Americans first, period. End of story. We are citizens of this nation, okay?
That's
and
right.
Israel, we have funded, we have supported, like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti-Semite, but my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions, not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go, you saw it, Megan. It was trending on Twitter, thousands of tweets and text messages.
It's offensive to those of us who have been out there defending them in many instances against critics on our own side. And now you have a couple of comments like, well, what about this? Well, has it gone on too long?
But it's
made a chilling Charlie Kirk once made a chilling prediction. He said that if he ever spoke out against Israel, they would kill him. Not just smear him, not just cancel him, kill him. And he tied that threat directly to his America First values. Because to truly put America first meant questioning the grip of Israel. Now he's dead. And not just dead, but taken out in the exact way he warned it would happen. A sniper, hidden, waiting, striking from a distance on a college campus. The perfect stage for a story that could be spun to blame domestic enemies, to fracture America even further. But that's not all. His assassination serves another purpose. It's a signal, a warning shot to anybody else who dares to break ranks. And the question we have to ask tonight is this: who really pulled the trigger? Charlie Kirk wasn't just another pundit. He was the voice of conservative youth in America. And that made him lethal to Israel. Because Israel doesn't stand on its own. It stands on the shoulders of American conservatives. Without that support, the whole house of cards comes crashing down. If Charlie flipped, if he told millions of young conservatives that Israel was not their fight, it would be over. Within the next generation, Israel would be finished. That's how much power he held. For Israel, Charlie Kirk wasn't just a threat, it was existential. Just months before his death, Charlie Kirk began to shift. He started to speak more critically about certain policies and certain actors that everybody knew were tied to Israel, or at the very least, heavily influenced by pro-Israel networks. And with that shift came a warning. Kirk said that Israel, and the intelligence or political forces aligned with it, had a reach that extended far beyond Washington. Dissent would not be tolerated. And for those who crossed the line, the consequences could be deadly. Most in the media called him alarmist, conspiratorial, over the top. But now, after the sniper's bullet, his words are being re-examined with a new and chilling urgency. One of the first people to connect the dots publicly was Harrison H. Smith, host of InfoWars. In a string of tweets and on-air statements, Smith dropped a bombshell. He claimed that those close to Charlie had confided something terrifying. That Charlie believed deep down that if he ever crossed Israel, if he ever turned against them, they would kill him. Not just cancel him, not just bury him in the press, but kill him. Charlie's audience was shifting. You could see it in the comments, in the energy at his events. Every day, more and more of them were turning against Israel. He couldn't ignore it forever. He was being forced to face that reality. And behind the scenes, he began telling his colleagues what was coming, that he was ready to take a stand, that he was going to align himself with Tucker Carlson and with Candace Owens. He knew the risks, he knew it could be catastrophic, but he also knew it was inevitable. Because Israel understands one thing very clearly. If they lose the young generation of American conservatives, they lose everything. Their influence, their funding, their unquestioned political support, all gone. Charlie saw that. He knew that if he came out and denounced Israel openly, directly, it could collapse the right-wing support for Israel almost overnight.
Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true, the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country that have done that. In fact, we have seen this with the recent retreat of Jewish donations that are no longer going to be administered to colleges, right? Mark Rowan, Leon Copperman. Can we get that full list? It's very powerful. The part of the so that's totally true. And by the way, Tucker Carlson reinforces this. So I'm going to it was quite a day on the internet. Tucker Carlson was interviewing Candace Owens. We have Candace Owens coming up next hour. And Tucker Carlson mentions that Jewish Americans have primarily been financing cultural Marxist ideas. We said this, by the way, last week, and people came after us.
We were on top of it.
We actually said it in a different way. We said, I'm glad that...
Who would have thought that a simple honey...
Someone's coming up next hour, and Tucker Carlson mentions that Jewish Americans have primarily been financing cultural Marxist ideas. We said this, by the way, last week, and people came after us.
We were on top of it.
We actually said it in a different way. We said, I'm glad that Jewish Americans are reconsidering their financing of cultural Marxism. And people misunderstood it intentionally and slandered us as being anti-Semites. But listen to this. Tucker Carlson is completely correct by saying this, that the philosophical foundation of anti-whiteness has been largely financed by Jewish donors in the country. And then
the unthinkable happened. A sniper's bullet, fired from a distance, on a college campus. The perfect stage for chaos, fear, and confusion. Within minutes, the narrative was ready-made. Blame it on domestic enemies. Blame it on a political division. Use it to stoke the fire that's already tearing this country apart. But for those who are domestic enemies, blame it on a political division. Use it to stoke the fire that's already tearing this country apart. But for those who had been listening, for those who remember Charlie's warnings, the details were impossible to ignore. He said the reprisals could be lethal. He said he would be killed if he crossed the wrong line. Like exposing the Jeffrey Epstein Mossad connections to millions of young mainstream conservatives.
Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation against the most powerful people on the planet. Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, but there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz-kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematic equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. And it's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just the guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis.
Did Charlie Kirk, with his audience of mainstream conservative youth, fly too close to the sun? Did he tell too much truth? Those closest to him are saying yes.
Ted Cruz uses the Bible to justify aid to Israel. Doesn't even know the verse.
I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of mine. You pull out the phone and use the...
It's in Genesis, but... So you're quoting a Bible phrase you don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
I think Ted Cruz is Genesis 12:3. I think a lot of people see that as off-putting.
Are you Catholic?
Converting to Catholic.
I can tell. This is my next. Oh, from Judaism?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So you're You're ethnically Jewish.
Ethnically Jewish.
And you have concerns about AIPAC.
Yes, I do.
I'm told that by some people that if I criticize AIPAC, I'm anti-Semitic.
I think it's ridiculous. Yeah. I feel like it's right to have a concern for your country.
Do you think that that AIPAC represents a kind of cutting in line of prioritization away from the American people?
Yes.
Would you guys say that's a fair summary? 100%. Meaning that, like, okay, we vote, we're citizens, but a separate group gets higher priority because of whatever reasons. You look like you want to chime in.
That the entirety of the idea of a PAC is to represent a group, but the fact that we're allowing a group that doesn't even represent American interests to influence the people who are supposed to be representing us.
So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, ugh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied. So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish. Here is me speaking on Turning Point USA's stage last year. And here's what I said, by the way, which got Charlie in a lot of trouble.
It's not that difficult. America first. First name America, last name first. We put this country's interests before the interests of foreign countries overseas. All of them. I don't care.
And yeah, Charlie got in trouble for the stuff that I said on stage. And then they came inward. I told that I was not allowed to speak at AmFest. The donors were making threats. But like, I went on tour with Turning Point last year. It's still on their website. It's so, this is like the strangest thing. And then when you look into who's writing these articles, like Victoria Churchill, you note that she has a connection to AIPAC. So AIPAC is pushing this. Here she is, starting off 2018 in D.C., and she got a picture of herself. If you can scroll down, I don't know if you can see this, like sitting in the audience in AIPAC, and she's thrilled. America, Israel. I've never stopped talking to Charlie. I mean, yesterday I released just one of many messages that I have with Charlie, which prove that he was, in the months leading up to this, concerned about Israel and how Israel was coming after our free speech. Free speech meant a lot to him. Me and Meghan and Tucker are not lying to you. Charlie was concerned about the speech, that he felt the restrictions. And inevitably this happens when you get into bed with Israel. You can't criticize them at all, as Meghan said, before you start enduring threats.
I really don't, because I don't know I don't want to spend too much time on this story. I really don't, because I don't know the truth or the extent of it. But I was attacked and I was called an anti-Semite, and I am resolutely pro-Israel, for the record. I love Israel. I want them to win and finish the war. But I was smeared and slandered by many people as being called an anti-Semite and conspiracy theorist for what is now reported in the Jerusalem Post. The IDF knew of Hamas's plan to kidnap 250 before the October 7th attack. The IDF had precise information about Hamas intentions, but due to prevailing conceptions in the security establishment and possibly negligence by officials, the warning signs were not acted on. I went on the Patrick Bet David podcast. In fact, we can get that tape, Ryan. Can we get that tape, Ryan? Where I went on the Patrick Bet David podcast back in October, and I did not know all the information, and I have been in Israel's corner and remained the entire time. And I said, I do not believe what we are being told, and I believe that they might have had a heads up. Was there a stand down order? and I was attacked by every possible direction. But now, this according to the Jerusalem Post, a newly surfaced document has revealed the IDF and intelligence systems have detailed the knowledge of Hamas's plan to raid Israel and kidnap before the October 7th massacre. The document was distributed a couple weeks prior, and they knew that an attack was coming. But I'm doing this for my own sake, to clear my name, because I was so viciously attacked. I was smeared and slandered. For a month, I was called an anti-Semite. And it's not an exaggeration. Washington Times, I could go through all the different publications that published that nonsense. There was a document titled Detailed End-to-End Raid Training was distributed on September 19, 2023, and described in detail the series of exercises conducted by Hamas elite units. These exercises included raiding military posts and kibbutzim, collective communities in Israel, kidnapping soldiers and civilians, and maintaining the hostages once they were in the Gaza Strip. The report by Can News stated, quote, security sources told Can News that the document was known to intelligence leadership, at least in the Gaza division. The Jerusalem Post reports that warning signs of the October 7th attack were not acted on. The IDF had precise information about Hamas's intentions, but due to prevailing conceptions within the security establishment and possible negligence by security officials, the warning signs were not acted upon. The report further detailed that Israeli intelligence officials monitored the exercises and documented the steps Hamas planned to take after breaching Israeli territory and taking over military posts. The expected number of hostages, according to the document, was between 200 and 250 people. Quote, Israeli intelligence officials who monitored the exercise detailed in the document all the steps that were taken. The expected number of hostages, 250 people. So then the General Staff Investigation Team is expected to present initial findings from the failure to the Chief of Staff in the coming weeks as the country seeks to understand how a lapse in security could occur despite having detailed advanced knowledge of the enemy's plans. So the Israeli government knew that the attack was going to happen. That is now what Jerusalem Post is saying. And the IDF is very, very close to victory. So this timing of this story is quite interesting, probably from the liberal arm. So part of the government knew. The question is, was Bibi Netanyahu briefed on this? I don't know. I have no idea. But it is something. It's really quite interesting. This is me on the Patrick Bet David show. And I say this again. I want Israel to finish the war, to win the war. All in. But I said what I said, and what I said is true. And it is a learning lesson. That when somebody says something that is rooted in shared experience, and he's also on your side. I was attacked by so many conservatives as being a conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones type. I don't even know what that means. This was me on the Patrick Bet David show. It was the #1 most viral clip for almost 3 to 4 days straight. Play cut 101.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier. Right? The whole country is surveilled. So that was received very poorly when I said it. And I'm just reading from the Jerusalem Post. This is not some sort of fringe thing. Again, they are liberal, so they're doing this to undercut the Israeli war effort. And again, I just call balls and strikes. This is the Socratic method. We want to get towards the truth. By the way, since I love Israel, I want to get closer to the truth. But it's very, very logical to have an inquiry. We don't know for a fact that there was a stand-down order. We don't know that. But we did say that the country was a fortress. And I cannot repeat enough that how attacked I was. I want to say this again. This is the Jerusalem Post that they wrote here. Quote, the country seeks to understand how such a lapse in security could occur despite having detailed advanced knowledge of the enemy's plans. This was not a surprise attack. It wasn't. That's what the Jerusalem Post is contending here, is that the parts of the Israeli government knew that this was going to happen. I don't know who. I certainly don't know why. And I don't want to speculate as to why. But October 7th has changed the Middle East permanently. It's changing parts of our country. This is very important that we find out what the heck happened leading up to. Who knew that this was going to happen? Why wasn't this shared? We need resignations at a minimum, and maybe people to go to jail. for allowing this to happen. And maybe, does this go all the way up to the top government of Israel? I don't know. I certainly hope not. And I say that as somebody who is cheering for them to win the war. We should be pro-Israel. They are a beacon of civilization against madman. They are a beacon of civilization against madman modern day Nazis. We want accountability and we want the truth. And the truth, I don't know what that is, but according to reports, is this was not a sneak attack. It was not a surprise attack. It was something that parts, at least, of the Israeli government knew was going to happen. The question is, did they let it happen?
The Mossad perfected the art of blackmailing people. They've also perfected the art of industrial electronic espionage. Everybody snoops, but the Israelis actually are running the electronic systems for the U.S. government. But what I have found in the United States is that all of our politicians are groomed. You don't get to be president unless you're bought and paid for. Now, I've also learned that CIA, FBI, and NSA have been spying on and blackmailing all of our politicians. Veterans understand that war is for bankers. War is waste, and we should not be going to war in America. We need to close all 1,000 of our bases overseas and bring our troops home. One element of the deep state I didn't mention before was the secret intelligence community. Those are the people who are smuggling guns, gold, drugs, cash, and small children as part of the totality of the deep state shadow government enterprise.
Senator Merkley and I are releasing our report and findings from our recent trip to Israel, to the West Bank, to the border of Gaza, both the Egypt-Gaza border, Israeli-Gaza border. From our trip, from our observations, from our firsthand accounts, it's clear that the Netanyahu government has gone far beyond targeting Hamas to imposing collective punishment on all the people of Gaza. The title of our report is "The Netanyahu Government is Implementing a Plan to Ethnically Cleanse Gaza of Palestinians. America is complicit. The world must stop it." The Netanyahu government has not kept its goals secret. And we start in this report by quoting members of the Netanyahu government, including Prime Minister Netanyahu himself, who has said that one of their war aims is the removal of the Palestinian population from Gaza. I urge all of you to read those quotes, because what now they're doing and what we witnessed is putting those goals into action in Gaza. We visited the Egyptian-Gaza border, and Senator Merkley and I had been there back in January 2024. And at that time, on the Gazan side of the border, was the thriving Palestinian town of Rafah. This time, when we went to that border, we were able to climb up a taller building and actually look directly into Gaza. And what we saw with respect to Rafah was rubble. We also met with some very courageous souls, people with true moral courage, people who had served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and served in Gaza, who told us that they had been part of this systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure. For example, 90% of the homes in Gaza have been destroyed or severely damaged. And in our interviews and through our observations, it was clear that the Netanyahu government is also restricting the delivery of humanitarian assistance into Gaza, including using food as a weapon of war.
Members of the media were granted fact check. Did Hamas behead babies? Let's look at what we know so far about where this claim came from and why some media outlets and the White House have retracted the claim. On Saturday, October 7th, Hamas attacked the kibbutz of Kfar Aza. Members of the media were granted permission on October 10th, 3 days later, by the Israeli army to visit Kfar Aza and witness the aftermath of the Hamas attack. During the visit, a reporter from Israeli news outlet I-24 tweeted saying, "Soldiers told me they believe 40 babies, children, were killed." As the day progressed, the information morphed from at least 40 babies were killed some were beheaded. On the day, the Israeli army could not confirm beheadings. The very next day, in London, commuters were subjected to this horrifying and unverified headline. On October 11th, many Western media outlets jumped on that claim, quoting the spokesman of Israel's prime minister.
The Israeli prime minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated in Kfar Aza.
But many of those same media outlets were forced to walk back their reporting, issuing updates like this one. Israel cannot confirm the specific claim that babies were beheaded in Hamas attack. Later that day, during a press conference, American President Joe Biden claimed he had seen photographs of beheaded babies, saying,
"I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children."
The White House later retracted the statement and published this correction. U.S. official and the president have not seen pictures nor confirmed such reports independently, but the damage had been done. Biden's initial claims were already featured on the front pages of many news outlets and continued to be cited in some quarters as justification for revenge attacks and the collective punishment of civilians in Gaza. Once these claims went viral, other journalists who were on the same visit to Kfar Aza on the 10th of October say, "No one spoke to me about beheadings, let alone beheadings of children, let alone beheadings of 40 children." Another Israeli journalist said, "During the tour, we didn't see any evidence of this, and the army spokesperson or commanders also didn't mention any such incidents." Sky News correspondent on the ground also confirms not being able to confirm these claims.
"We have not seen the evidence of that. We have asked the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, 3 times to confirm those numbers. They have not yet."
Later, the same journalist that broadcasted the claims of the spokesman of Israel's prime minister posted an apology, saying, "The Israeli government now says today it cannot confirm babies were beheaded. I needed to be more careful with my words, and I am sorry." Hamas has denied claims that its fighters beheaded children, calling them lies. As details continue to emerge from the aftermath of the Kfar Aza attack, the line between facts and misinformation has blurred. Lies and half-truths have been disseminated by officials and mainstream media in what is becoming a propaganda war.
3 things which are really dramatic. Number 1, they have done 3 things which are really dramatic. Number 1, they were a small minority of 2% of the population. At the time when Hitler came to power, 500,000 within 60 million German people. 500,000 among 60 million. They were a small minority. This small minority managed to control about 50% of the media, to give about 70% of all judges, to have a tremendous influence in movie and in theater and in literature. They were overrepresented. This is one thing. They were absolutely overrepresented, as today in England, in France, and in the United States. Second, Jews were at the origin of a lot of catastrophic financial bank crashes in Germany between 1870 and 1920. In that time, they made a lot of crashes which have, this is all documented. It's not Nazi propaganda or anti-Semitic or Arab propaganda. It's a lot of books have been published, even by Jewish Germans, about this problem. They have millions of German fathers have lost their incomes, their fortune, their savings because of these Jewish gangsters, bank gangsters and speculation people. Then the third point, which was psychologically the most dangerous of all, they have introduced into German art and culture and theater and movie decadence, immorality. The first homosexual theaters, plays, were made in Berlin in the 1920s. The first adultery theater plays were made in the 1880s and 1890s, 100 years ago, by Jewish authors. Adultery, then sexual perversions of all sorts, sadism, masochism, a lot of homosexuality, all these things, and then decadent art, an art which is absolutely ridiculous, so-called modern art. It was all pushed by Jewish intellectuals, and this created among the German people a big revolt. And they wrote books ridiculing Christianity, ridiculing Jesus. And there were furious reactions in Germany. And this is why Adolf Hitler came to power. And you see then Hitler in 2 years, from 33 to 35, he brought 6 million unemployed Germans back into their jobs.
Not counting gang violence. Great. Counting gang violence. Great.
Yeah. You think he'd already be in place?
You would think that. So there's somebody on the roof right there? Just saying. He just ran in. And now he's right there.
You're not counting gang violence. Great.
You know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great. Get down. What the fuck? There have been in America over the last 10 years.
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
Charlie Kirk talks about gang violence, and right as he finished that, he was shot in the neck. I was about 50 feet away. Again, I was more focused on wedging my way through the crowd to speak to Charlie than actually what was going on. And I did, for a brief second, see Charlie's head slump over, and then the crowd just pushed back. It was a stampede.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven. Our prayers are with his wife, Erica, the 2 young, beloved children, and his entire family, who he loved more than anything in the world. We ask God to watch over them in this terrible hour of heartache and pain. This is a dark moment for America.
The nation of Charlie Kirk, the fog of as days turn into weeks after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the fog of evidence pointing to Israel's fingerprints on this broad daylight strike keeps getting denser, louder, and more disturbing. What we're looking at is not just a tragic killing, but a carefully orchestrated takedown of one of the few rising conservative voices who was beginning to call out Zionism without fear.
And look at this woman. That's the one that gets this shot done, okay? I'm going to make myself even smaller so that you can see more. I'm going to play it. And
So, do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years?
puts it down.
Too many.
Then he brings it up again. He talks to someone. He gets a signal. He's going to pull out the phone again, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to see this. So
Do you know how many
it's going to be
mass
horrible.
shooters
There you go.
have
That's your
been
sign.
in America
Go again.
over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
He tried at first and missed. Watch these hands.
Violence.
Watch him again.
10 years.
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Like, he jumps. When he finally gets him, he jumps.
I was standing from probably the third row in the bottom. I heard the shot ring out. I looked to my left, and then I looked over to my right. I saw him slump over in his chair forward. He slumped over. He had blood coming from the left side of his neck down his shirt, and he slumped over and he was carried off.
We're not doing it.
Get off me! Get off me!
Emotions are running high right now.
Let's say you have 50K in cash.
In fact, the number of video clips showing Charlie at various points questioning Israel's role in global manipulation is overwhelming. Too many to even show you in this single piece. He was stepping into dangerous territory, demanding accountability from Mossad, linking Epstein's shadowy network to Israel, and pointing fingers at the deep state. That is not something Tel Aviv forgives.
I think the majority mover of Gen Z and Gen Z conservatives is exhaustion.
Precisely.
Would you guys think that's a fair categorization?
Yes, for sure.
I mean, again, there is like an isolated, like, weirdo, I hate Jews. We don't like that. No one in decent society wants that. But instead, it's kind of like, can we just, I don't know, make it so I can buy a home?
Yeah.
Or like deport people?
Exactly.
Yeah. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
You're not anti-Israel. You don't wish them harm. You're not, like cheering on Iran.
No, I support Israel. I think they're our ally. I want them.
But you would be called an anti-Semite by some people for saying this.
And I think that's ridiculous. I don't hate Jews because I think a nation should defend themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I think that's the most ridiculous thing ever.
I feel like it's becoming like the word racism. Like, we just disagree with them, so we just have to call them a name. I don't think they're actually anti-Semitic. I think people just can't agree with them and they can't prove them wrong. So they just throw a word out and be like, you're anti-Semitic because you think that we should stop sending our money there.
Something that I see amongst the people I'm around, I do see more like general disdain towards, just being honest, Jewish people.
That's correct.
Just because they're constantly being told that you hate Jews. And it's like, fine. If you're going to say I hate Jews over and over and over again, like, if I'm going to be convicted of the crime, I might as well do the crime. I fear the same thing happens with all the talk of race. The more we talk about it, the more we bring it up, the more racism actually happens.
This is like, I try to tell, thank you for saying this. Like, because like, I try to tell these people and they're like, we must get more aggressive. And so like, let me ask a question. If we were to remove, like if people said what Tucker said is anti-Semitic, I don't hold that view. But it's like a lot of people on Twitter are like calling us out and like, whatever. That's not going to happen.
And as if we are all fools, they wasted no time pivoting. Ben Shapiro is suddenly back on the road, restarting his campus tour, presenting himself as the ready-made replacement for Charlie, as if the machine had a backup plan in waiting. At the same time, Rabbi Shmuley didn't even allow the dust of blood to dry before rushing out appeals for more funds, almost as though Charlie's assassination was just another campaign opportunity.
I saw a lot of rumors online today. I was made aware of this by my team that I canceled some sort of college tour. That's bullshit. I saw those rumors. They are false. I will be coming to college campuses, many of them this year. So will we all, I am sure, because we're Americans and we're not going to be deterred. Charlie's voice is not silent. We're going to pick up that blood-stained microphone where Charlie left it. And to those who would intimidate, who would seek to stop us, who would seek to end free discussion.
Before I go deeper, take a moment right now, like this video, back in Washington, on the very same day Charlie was assassinated, Senate Republicans sneaked through a bill criminalizing the boycott of Israel. Do you really think that's coincidence? It's textbook distraction. While the nation was glued to the shocking murder of a public figure, Congress quietly locked in another weapon for Zionists, the legal silencing of dissent against a genocidal state slaughtering millions in Gaza. To add insult to injury, the FBI's behavior is raising its own questions. Viral comparisons show inconsistencies between the wanted image circulated during the manhunt and the supposed mugshot after arrest. Classic Mossad sleight of hand, swapping images, muddying trails, and keeping the public guessing while the real operatives slip back into the shadows. But if you still doubt Mossad's role, I've got one more thing. Watch the footage of Charlie hammering Israel and exposing the sham of so-called Judeo-Christian values. That's enough to sign his death warrant in Zionist eyes.
This method of...
That's enough to sign his death warrant in Zionist eyes.
Yeah, that's right. And we must understand that if we were to do forceful regime change, sounds good. Lindsey Graham is cheering for that. What would happen to the refugees? Where would they go? Millions of people going to the West. The country could fall into civil war. And understand, they're warriors there. These are the Persians. They were a great power for 1,000 years. Not even the Romans could defeat Persia. Now, I'm not saying they're comparable to our Marines or to our Air Force, but is that really the battle that we want in front of us? And President Trump understands this astutely.
Even respected journalists like Max Blumenthal of the Grey Zone have warned of the same thing. Mossad's assassination tactics are so advanced, so refined, that even the White House lives in fear of crossing them. A department specifically designed for international political killings operating with impunity exists within Israel's security apparatus. That terrifies even Washington insiders. Think about it. If this machinery can topple leaders abroad, silencing a conservative commentator in the U.S. would be child's play. It's no wonder indicted felon Donald Trump himself is rumored to be spooked by the reach of this operation.
Does the President of the United States fear for his life?
Yes. Yes, I mean, obviously he fears for his life, and I was told that he feared for his life before the 2 assassination attempts, one coming within a millimeter of striking his head. I mean, let's not forget about that.
But I mean, just to clarify, he doesn't fear for his life because of Ireland.
I mean, I've been told, yes, that Israel is a major source of concern for Trump. I mean, think about it. What would happen
this is
if
our
the president
ally.
if he suspended if he suspended arms to a country that carries out assassinations all across the globe, that specializes in assassinations, that has an entire wing of its intelligence services that conducts assassinations, including with household goods like pagers, would you not be scared? So yes, Trump is scared. And what I learned from this source, who is a Trump insider, someone who talks to who talks to people in the Oval Office, people close to Trump, is that during one of Netanyahu's many visits to the U.S. this year, some figures in his retinue, Israeli agents, placed electronic devices on emergency response Secret Service vehicles. The Secret Service found them and they reported this to the White House. You know, these would be emergency response vehicles that would respond to an incident potentially involving the president.
Thank you for watching. Stand with me against this tide of lies and silence. Support my work.
200 yards away, right in the jugular vein. Charlie Kirk is shot in the neck from 200 yards away, right in the jugular vein. And as people are running away, the police somehow find this guy who was a patsy. He faked the whole thing to divert attention from the real shooter on the rooftop 200 yards away. Then we find out that the shooter managed to escape without a trace. No security camera footage. No one saw him on the campus. Moments after, though, the shooting takes place, you have Benjamin Netanyahu who comes out and tweets about this before anyone else, before Trump even, the personal friend of Charlie Kirk. Then a few moments later, you have Benjamin Netanyahu come out and say that I was speaking to Charlie Kirk 2 weeks ago. I invited him to Israel. What? You invited him to Israel after he was saying all these things about Mossad, about Gaza, about Iran, and he was getting all this flack for having Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith speak at TPUSA. All of your Hasbara agents were attacking Charlie Kirk, and you decided to stop your schedule, bombing 7 countries in the middle of this political crisis in your country, to have a conversation with Charlie Kirk, call him and say that he needs to come to Israel to kiss the wall again.
And Benjamin Netanyahu had made a comment and made the announcement that Charlie Kirk had passed, that he was in fact dead, that Charlie has died. They made that announcement roughly 20 minutes after the shooting.
Fact is now Bibi, and the Israeli hard right government has a mandate. I gotta be careful the way I say this. They're gonna try to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Yep.
I mean I don't use that term lightly. Okay, they're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there. Okay, right?
Yeah.
So
I want you to address one thing, and it's just the absurdity of it. Some of the internet rumors that somehow Israel is behind the Charlie Kirk murder, and I don't believe it for 1 second. But I want you to make a statement. It's so absurd.
That's insane.
Israel also changes the orbit of the moon. Israel pushes the sun. I mean, the whole thing it's not only insane, I think it's so absurd, so stupid, and so ridiculous. You can't believe that people are saying that. They just found the perpetrator. They'll get to the bottom of this. But they go, they have no limits. When you hate Jews, when you hate the Jewish state, you're willing to say anything.